It took 20 years, from the floodgate closing of 1963 to the flood year of 1983, for the lake to fill to capacity and for Glen Canyon to finish dying. Most who flocked to Lake Powell during the first years of its existence were people who regretted, mourned, or were enraged by the loss of the Colorado River. They were also impassioned or cynical enough to take advantage of the access that the rising waters gave them to previously inaccessible caves, ledges, and side canyons. For several years after our trip, Katie Lee explored side canyons in an outboard-powered skiff that seemed to be called Screwdriver, until you noticed a small gap between the D and the R, rendering it Screwed River. While I made numerous camping trips in the Utah Canyon country with Katie during that period, I steered clear of Glen Canyon. I didn't want to bear witness to its end, and I put it off with the dread of being roused from a sumptuous dream. For some canyoneers, Lake Powell was simply a truce with reality. For others who discovered Glen Canyon after it had already begun to fill, it was a series of fresh adventures in a new country, new every year as the reservoir rose. My name is Wildstag, and thank you for tuning in to another used book rant. Today I'm going to be covering this book, There Was a River. Essays on the Southwest, written by Bruce Berger. The back note says, Bruce Berger is the author of The Telling Distance, Conversations with the American Desert, which won the Western States Book Award for Nonfiction in 1990. His previous book includes Notes of a Half-Aspenite. His previous books include Notes of a Half-Aspenite, A Dazzle of Hummingbirds, and Hangin' On. He has also played the piano professionally, both in this country and in Spain. This book I purchased for $6. I'm almost certain from Coaz Books in Las Cruces, New Mexico. I say that partially because of their habit of writing the price in the top corner here of the cover page of a book, as well as for the fact that it was written about the Southwest, and that's where I happen to find a lot of these books is, people write about the Southwest, people that live in the Southwest then read those books, and then they recycle those books back into the system as used books at used bookstores in the Southwest. This was published by the University of Arizona Press, and then it gives the address that is in Tucson, Arizona. The cover photo is of the Lower Glen Canyon, Arizona, September 1956. Copyright Tad Nichols. Cover design by Carrie Nelson House. This book is copyright 1994. It says, this book is printed on acid-free archival quality paper. A catalog record for this book is available from the British Library. The first section of this book, the first chapter, is titled, There Was a River. And it lasts for about 60 pages and details the author's explorations of the Glen Canyon before it was flooded, before the dam was finished. He says on page 24, the scale of the country constantly baffled us, less because of its actual size than the freakishness of its smooth, sculpted shapes that didn't relate to anything we knew. Our camp was clearly visible below us, but how far was it? In pictures we took of side canyons, Moqui steps, precipices, and horizons of whorled stones, we nearly always included a member of our party to establish scale. But in the developed pictures, the landscape still lacked scale, for the figure was out of context and merely seemed an artistic mistake. With solid walls instead of mirrors, Glen Canyon was still a house of illusion. Bruce Berger ends up finding a ledge up in a canyon that had some pottery sherds, a fine agate knife, and they were puzzling over the double-notched serrated piece of agate. "What is it?" I asked. "I don't know," said Leo. "But when archaeologists don't know what something's for, they say it's ceremonial." And really, this first 60-page portion is lamenting that all these amazing parts of the Glen Canyon, the settlements within it, the beautiful natural features, all of these are lost to time because the Glen Canyon Dam flooded the region and made Lake Powell. The book in total is 200 pages long. And like I said, the first part, There Was a River, is about 60 pages long. The writing is similar thematically to Bill Bryson's The Lost Continent and to a couple other books of the Southwest that I've read and then discussed on this channel. It's a collection of essays. Rick Bass is another good example of this style of writing, thematically and descriptively. Each author comes to their travels from a different angle. Bill Bryson isn't much of a camper. He's more of a road tripper. He ended up attempting the Appalachian Trail, but every single thru hiker I've talked to and every person I know that truly passionately loves the Appalachian Trail laments that Bill Bryson's book on it is only really good for the visibility it brought to the Appalachian Trail and less for the worth and the value in his thru hiking attempt. Rick Bass, however, is more of a journalist. He is going around places with other famous Southwest authors and discussing portions of the Four Corners regions that need a spotlight brought to them. For example, in The Lost Grizzlies, he is discussing plight of the grizzly bear population in southern Colorado. And he focuses on the Rocky Mountains overall. For example, he also covers the 9 Mile wolves, a wolf population in Montana. Rick Bass is focused on nature writing, but in a different way than Bruce Berger is. Bruce Berger is very centralized on the Four Corners region, and he's not a journalist. He is a essayist, a columnist by trade, but he's not someone who goes out and interviews people. He doesn't quite do the same things as Rick Bass. But these stories, and There Was a River, do include some road tripping, do include some camping, do include some talking to people. He is a traveler, a wanderer, but very much a desert rat, which is kind of what I get from... in a way, he seems similar to Gary Paul Nabin, who I've also discussed. He was the one who did The Desert Smells Like Rain, and I discussed it on this channel. I cannot think of it right now. But their writing style is similar, as is the content and theming. So those are some good books that I have covered on this channel that I think if you are looking for books of those kind, There Was a River is a great example. Songbirds, Truffles, and Wolves, which was the Gary Paul Nabin one that I was just talking about. And so there are so many fascinating authors that are similar to this one, and I paid $6 for this copy of There Was a River, but I find it both fascinating and educational. It teaches me about the Southwest, a time frame before I was born, and portions of the Southwest I will never get to experience. The Glen Canyon is drying up, but it will never be released. The Glen Canyon Dam will never be undone in my lifetime. I'm almost certain of it. And so I will never get to experience the Glen Canyon in the way that Berger did in the weeks before the dam was finished. I'm never going to get to experience the wonders of that region, even if they do break the dam in my lifetime and I get to experience the Glen Canyon. It's not going to be the healthy ecosystem it was before the dam was finished. So this offers a glimpse into that past and a glimpse into what was lost. And there was a lot to lose when the Glen Canyon Dam was finished. And this really gives us a good example of that. So if you're looking for a book about the Glen Canyon, or are an environmentalist, a preservationist, even the conservationists, if you feel the loss of the Glen Canyon and want to learn more about it, this is a good book for you as well. There's another good example here of one of his essays. This one is only a few pages long. In fact, it looks like it's only a total of 2 pages. It starts on page 133, but it's only about half the page. And then, a full back page and then half an additional page. So it's only about 2 pages long. But in that time, he describes the saguaro cactus. The odds have always been against a saguaro cactus. Only 1 out of every 275,000 seeds grows to maturity. Sensitive tots, they must begin their life in the shade of a nurse tree. They take 25 years to grow the first 2 feet. They don't branch until they are 75 years old and only reach true adulthood at 100 years. At full growth, a saguaro can top 50 feet, weigh more than 10 tons, and live 250 years. Until recently, life under such conditions has precluded travel. A few years ago, I was able to follow, first from newspaper reports, then in person, the odyssey of one contemporary saguaro from origin to conclusion. He ends it, because the saguaro was just beginning to branch, I figured that it had been born close to the year when Arizona became a state in 1912. Its midsection, dark as the asphalt and invisible on approach, blocked one lane of traffic and was the next potential accident. I intended to stand in front of it, motioning traffic away until a police car came by. The next car, it happened, was a taxi. When I pointed to the cactus, it slowed, nudged the pulp to the curb as if such bulldozing were standard, and sped off. The next morning I went back to see what remained. Only skid marks showed where the sedan had gone out of control, and the saguaro had been removed to wherever our tax dollars dispose of our mistakes. The saguaro is a protected cactus. It is a cactus that Arizona does its best to protect because these are such amazing cacti. They live for so long, they grow so slowly, and they are iconic. Every time you see the image of the Hollywood desert landscape, red sand as far as the eye can see, towering buttes, and those branching arms of the saguaro, that is iconic desert. That is the iconic American Southwest, and the saguaros only grow as far east as eastern Arizona. I don't think they go much further east than Tucson, and they don't grow in Utah or Nevada. I think if they do exist in California, they're very sparse. They are, at least in America, very unique to Arizona. They need very specific elevations, temperatures, and moisture levels. They're very delicate plants. But they're very iconic, and even discussing them, he shows a degree of reverence for them because a lot of Arizonans, especially those that are conservationist minded, have that mindset towards them. So you get a good healthy mix of environmentalism, description of human versus environment, and that's really what this book is good for. So if you like that kind of book, I think Bruce Berger's There Was a River is a good book for you to read. Like I said, only 200 pages long. The first section, 60 pages long, reads very quickly, very educationally, very naturalistically. So that's one of those books that I think if you want to read about the desert Southwest, this is a good book. I have a newfound appreciation for the Grand Canyon and the Colorado River, and it is really tragic that they lost a significant portion of it because of the progression of man, the need to dam every single river they could. That push to dam so many rivers also showed up in Nature Noir by Jordan Fisher Smith, which is one of the first books I covered on this channel. And in it, he is on the American River in California. He's a ranger at what should eventually become a dammed lake, but is in development hell because it just never gets completed. There's a lot of those books in the Western US that are set there that cover damming projects and how damning they are to the environment and to the people that work those areas. So, Bruce Berger's There Was a River. If you get a chance, check it out. I really enjoyed it, and I think if you have any interest in the desert Southwest, you will enjoy it too. My name is Wildstag, and thank you for tuning in to another used book rant.